So, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We'll make a start. It's great to have you join us. We're here to talk about Cornerstone. I'm going to be sharing with you for about half an hour, 40 minutes or so, and then there'll be time for some questions as well. Hopefully, some of you have heard about Cornerstone before. As I just mentioned a moment ago, hopefully you're in the right webinar. If not, it is warm, so perhaps you're in the wrong one, but you are totally welcome to stay and find out a little bit more about this resource. This is going to be a bit of an introduction to Cornerstone and where the diocese is at with this as a tool for parishes. But yeah, we've been talking about Cornerstone in the diocese for almost a year. We've been quite light touch with it, and just to say, it is a tool that's been developed by the national church, and it's something that we are interested in sharing with our parishes. Just a couple of housekeeping bits. Don't worry too much about taking notes because I will share the slides afterwards, and it is very warm. So if you need to get a drink or anything at any point, that's absolutely fine as well. And I am also recording this session so that we can share this for those who couldn't make it. And so that we can put it as a useful resource on our website as well. So it sort of serves both those functions. But let's start just by introducing myself. My name is Jordan Shepherd. I am the Generous Giving Promoter and the Creative Communications Officer. I'm working on the longest job title at the diocese. Maybe one or two other people have got the title at the moment, but I'm working my way up to the longest one. I kind of juggle two roles, so I work within the stewardship team, which is why I'm here talking about Cornerstone this evening. But I also work in the communications team as well as the stewardship team, so kind of juggle both things. And I've been around for about 5 years. And just quickly, what we'll cover in this session. So what is Cornerstone? We'll look at two concepts, mint and idea, that kind of becomes the framework for Cornerstone itself. We'll have a bit of a demo and I'll show you what it actually looks like to use Cornerstone. And it breaks into three separate sort of chunks: insights, pathways, grants. And then I'll talk briefly about the Cornerstone sessions that we've run in the past. I'll mention about the generosity review and then give you some next steps if you think that this is helpful for you. And then this is probably the most important slide in the whole in this whole evening, and it's only just one bullet point, but it's just a reminder that Cornerstone is predominantly a financial and giving tool, although there are some elements to it that are perhaps not financially based as well. But I think it's really important just at the start that we reflect that generosity comes in lots of different forms in our time, in our talent, and our treasure as well. And it's just important to say as well that everyone has something to bring, no matter where they are, where they're at, and who they are. So with that in mind, why don't we just open with just a moment of quiet, and then I'll pray for us as we start. Thank you, Lord, for this evening, for this opportunity to talk about resources with our friends here. And thank you, Lord, for all the parishes and benefices that they represent around our diocese. And Lord, I pray that this evening we'll have open ears and hearts to learn. And Lord, help us to forget anything silly that I say and just keep what's good in our minds going forward. And Lord, we just thank you as well that we remember that generosity ultimately has come from you and that you first gave to us. So thank you, Lord. Amen. Brilliant. So, Cornerstone, what is Cornerstone? You've probably all come from slightly different backgrounds and areas and different parishes and things like that. And maybe you've heard about Cornerstone, maybe you've been involved in Cornerstone a little bit or tried it out for yourself. But essentially, Cornerstone is an all-in-one tool for PCCs to grow their giving and generosity within their church. It's something that's been set up by the National Giving Team. So the National Church of England have created this as a resource, and it's supported by them, which means that it's got ongoing sort of development and support essentially. And it's free for every parish to use, which is the good thing. I think there's no element of it that you have to pay for, which is brilliant. And it's designed to increase your church's understanding of your giving culture and financial situation. One other thing that's useful for me to say as well, right at the start, is this isn't a mandatory tool in any way. This is something for you to pick up and use as you see fit, and to really pull out the parts of it that you think are going to be beneficial to you and to your parish. So, how will my parish benefit from this tool? Well, too many. It gives you an opportunity to spend a dedicated time thinking about planning your next steps for generosity and giving. It gives you a greater understanding for all of your church decision makers. And I think that's quite key as well. Often, in terms of our church's financial picture, it can be the treasurer who has a very clear understanding of where the parish is at, and everyone else is trying to extract information from them or find out. And actually, this is a great tool for sort of sharing that load and enabling lots of people to have an understanding and an involvement in the conversation around church finance. It saves time on researching how to grow giving and generosity because it houses lots of resources all in one place. It's got step-by-step guidance on some less tangible areas of giving and generosity. And at the moment, this is one of the... Ooh, we've got a late joiner. There we go. Welcome, welcome. At the moment, this is one of the most comprehensive tools to grow giving and generosity currently available. There are other things out there like Giving in Grace and other tools, but this really is quite an interactive resourcing tool. One of the best I've come across, certainly. And really importantly as well, it's a huge free grants database. And maybe some of those things sound useful, maybe more than others perhaps, but it's all housed within Cornerstone. But I think it's really useful as well for me to say that Cornerstone is simply a website that houses all of this information. I often use the word platform or tool or system. It really is just a website, so useful to bear that in mind. Brilliant. So I'm going to break down those three areas then that it sort of looks into. So the first one is Cornerstone Insights. And essentially what this is a section of the Cornerstone website that pulls data from our parish finance returns. And when I heard that a couple of years ago, when I first learned about Cornerstone, I thought to myself, oh no, this is another portal for people to input data into. But thankfully, it pulls that data directly from parish finance returns so that we don't have to input any new data. What I will say, I think is important to note is the data is behind. If you are a treasurer or if you submit your parish finance returns, that deadline was actually last week. And so the Church of England sort of always works on a bit of an 18-month delay where financial information is concerned. But the insight section of the website is full of useful graphs, which I'll show you in a few minutes. And it's good for sort of gauging trends and looking at sort of where we've come from in terms of our giving over the last, say, 5 years or so. One thing as well to add is you can update information in this section yourself. So if you would like it to be as up to date as you have the information for, you can manually input that data if you want to. Brilliant. Then Cornerstone Pathways is the second part of the website of the Cornerstone platform. I really think that this is where parishes can pull out some real gold. It's basically where the resources are kept, and it's step-by-step guides on practical things that you can do or introduce to build that generous culture within a parish. Essentially, it's 55 guides, as I checked today, on some of those things. So things like communicating your impact, and then encouraging giving from new congregational members, exploring generosity using the lectionary. These are all the sort of titles of some of those resources. Getting started with online giving, income generation, maximizing church hall income, preaching and teaching on generosity, and many more. So lots of useful things, and things for different people, things there for incumbents, things for church wardens, and things for treasurers as well. And then the final part of the platform itself is the grants database. And this is essentially just a big database of places that you can find grant providers. I checked today, there were 945 different grant providers on there, all for different things, looking to support different sort of causes and different elements that are linked with work in our churches. And these have been, it's quite good actually. Every time I go on to the Cornerstone grants section of the website, the number fluctuates, which is really positive, between sort of 800 and something, 900 and something, because it shows that the national team are selecting ones to remove and adding new ones as well. So really, really good. But most importantly, on there, you'll see that there's a link to the grant provider, their website. So how you can specifically go out and approach these people to look for grants. So really useful as well. So just a quick question, just as we take a very quick breather, which part of Cornerstone perhaps looks most useful for you and for your parish? Because I appreciate, obviously, we all represent different parishes, and there may be people that you're thinking, actually, that bit's really useful for me, but I know that that might benefit someone else in my benefit or parish. So think about that, and a reminder that, of course, pick up what's useful and leave what isn't. I notice we have something in the chat. I think we're okay. Keep going. Brilliant. So looking at the two concepts then, to building a generous church. This is perhaps the framework or theory behind the platform. And it's something that's been developed by the National Church. And these are the sort of elements that you as a parish could put in place to build a real good culture of growing generosity. And they are in the form of two helpful acronyms. The first one being MINT. And this one really is about all the practical things that you can do. By developing these, we put in place the best things to succeed. So if I whiz through what each of these mean, it's kind of self-explanatory, hopefully. But just to kind of expand on each one, mechanism is about having the right mechanisms in place to enable people to give. And those are things like the parish giving scheme, standing order, contactless giving, online giving, QR codes, legacy giving, maximizing our use of gift aid where we can. So all those sorts of practical ways that people can give to our parishes. I is for impact. This is quite a key one, and I'll reflect on this as we go through this evening. But impact is about, showing the impact of people's giving and how that will enable the church to continue to develop its mission and ministry in its local community, and with the people that it serves. So impact is quite a key one. Need is some things is something that some of our churches are really good at, and sometimes we're not so good at. But it's about explaining quite simply the needs that we have. Sometimes it's quite obvious if there's a leaky roof, that's going to be one of our needs. But other times it can be slightly more nuanced. But do we explain our need to people well? And then the final one on this first acronym is trust. Building trust so that people have confidence that the church will spend gifts and donations wisely and well. Being open, honest, and transparent, and communicating clearly about that. So mint, there you go. That's the first one. That's quite the practical. That's the practical bits. And then the second one is idea. So mint and idea. And idea really is the more cultural side of this. And this is about reflecting the generosity of God and how we can do that as individuals and as congregations. So I for inspire, inspiring people through generous leadership and celebrating generosity within the life of the church. Disciple, it's about discipling members through things like resources, teaching, learning, small groups, and things like that, and growing in our understanding of God's generosity so that we can then again reflect that generosity back to others. Embed is about being generous as a church, and it is generosity part of the church's sort of mission and ideas that the church actually does. When the church receives money and gifts, is it generous back to its community and back to those around the life of the church? And then finally, A is for activate, and this is about providing opportunities for people to grow in their generosity and to really apply what they've learned in those other three things there, really putting generosity into action. So by understanding those two key concepts, we're setting ourselves up, setting our parish up for building that generous culture. And what you'll see as we go on through the rest of this is that a lot of these concepts become the framework for the pathways in the resource itself. So let's have a look at that now. So insights, pathways, and grants. This is the home page of the website. So if you were to log in, this is a diocese example, but if you were to log into Cornerstone, this is what it should look like for you. It's quite simple. You have a navigation bar on the left-hand side, and then a quick snapshot of some of the things that you can do or have been doing with the platform itself. And so the first one is insights. So this is what insights would look like. They have 8 different graphs. Those graphs look at things like regular giving, worshipping community, things like legacies received, total income, total expenditure. And they're really useful because these graphs are interactive. As you click on them, things change. You can see different things. And one thing that's really useful as well to see in lots of these graphs is they have a comparison between your own parish's giving and the national average and the diocesan average. So you can quite quickly see, do we have lots of givers who perhaps don't give very much? Or is it the other way around? Do we have not many givers who give quite a substantial amount? And that becomes quite quick and easy to see. Or quite possibly, do we have not a lot of givers who don't give quite a lot, and there's maybe a bit of work to do in both those areas. But this is quite an easy tool to use to see that data sort of up front. So as I said, that's the insights section. It's quite simple to have a look and a play around with. But as I said earlier as well, the data is a little bit behind. The 2024 data should be in there very, very soon. And then what you can expect is from January 27, you should have the 25 data in there. So it always works about 18 months behind. That's just the Church of England for you. Always a bit slow on these sorts of things. So the next section is Cornerstone Pathways. As I mentioned, this is where I think the real gold is in here. This is what the pathways section looks like. So you can see on the left-hand side of the screen there's a short list of different pathways that you can be working on or working through. But just to highlight a few on here, this actually says 52. This screenshot was from a little while ago. There's actually 55 as I checked today. July 26 is where we are now. So things like apply for grant funding. There's a pathway to support you through that process. Celebrating a generous Easter. Create an impact of giving leaflet. Embedding generosity into your weekly practices. So hopefully you can see there that those are all filterable by that mint and idea concept that I introduced to you earlier. So if we think actually it's that impact bit that we need to focus on, you could look at the pathway that says communicate your impact. So if we click on that, this is what that would then look like. So as I mentioned, these are really practical step-by-step things that you can do. So on the left-hand side, you have each step. Each step is specific to be, they always say that each step should be about 30 minutes to complete. It's about 30 minutes of work, and they vary in the amount of steps that they have. Some pathways have lots of steps, some just have a few. This one has 8. They always start with an introduction, so kind of outlining what you'll be doing in this process. One thing that's quite good is you can assign an owner. So if you have a few people within your PCC perhaps signed up to this, you can say, okay, we're going to let our incumbent do this one, and myself, the treasurer, I'm going to do that one, and we'll work on these sort of separately. Or you could work on them together and go through, maybe you divvy them up and say, I'll do steps 1 to 4, you do 5 to 8 or something like that. And then as you go through, you can mark them as complete. So when someone else logs in, they can see how far along you've got with a certain pathway. Brilliant. So if I jump across to step 4 of this one, so this is about impact, as I've mentioned. This is saying what we need to do to help us on this journey of collecting data is to fill out this snapshot of statistics. You can see the example there. It says 23 people in home groups, 3 people baptized, 17 bags of food donated to the food bank. But if you see at the bottom there, there's a document that you can download. As I said, it's really quite practical. And then if you were to download that, this is the Word document that it would then give you. And it gives you a suggestion list there that's quite useful. You know, number of marriages, number of baptisms, families supported through grief and loss, number of people who call your church home, so on and so forth. Lots of things to really help you find that data, and then you're able to then build a kind of comprehensive supporting amount of data to help you when it comes to communicating your impact. And I mentioned that I was going to come back to this. This is impact. I don't know if you've heard of the Anglican Giving Survey. I am a big fan of the Anglican Giving Survey. If you're not aware, this is something that the National Church does. They've done it twice. They did it first in 2020. They've done it again last year, so in 2025, so 5 years later. And this is one of their findings, and it really stuck out to me as something that we could reflect on perhaps this evening. But it says 70% of Anglicans who give regularly to their church would give more if they had a greater understanding of the impact that it made. 70% of Anglicans would give more if they understood the impact. I think that's really quite key, something for us to ponder perhaps and take away. Really quite a useful finding. You can find the Anglican Giving Survey just by searching those words. It's on the Church of England website. It's full of useful information. But that's the one that sticks out to me. Brilliant. Moving on to the grants database. I think it's good to say that as I mentioned, there's 900, and I think when I checked today, it was 945 different providers. this is what it looks like. Again, it's essentially um, the same sort of layout. Nothing's really changed, but what we have now is a list of different grant providers. So this one says 921. That was the last time I took these screen grabs. Um, a cool feature is you can make a short list. Obviously, when you're looking for grant providers, we often don't just look for one provider. We look for multiple that may be able to support us. And it is filterable. What I will say, a little disclaimer, is the filtering function. It does work. It's not the best. It is something that I've been told is in their future developments, which is for this year. So yeah, that is kind of what that looks like. And then, as you can see on those lines, it tells you who it is. It gives you a bit of information, the value of the grants they're looking to support. So what would happen then if we this is an example of me sort of picking a few filters, less than 10,000. I want to support something to do with youth and children, and I want it to be an application form based sort of system. When you go through that, it will then produce you a list of different options, which you, as I said, you can shortlist. This is what a shortlist section will look like. And if I click on the one in the bottom left that says Anchor Foundation, this is what it would give you then, and this is the data that it would provide you with. This is quite a cool one. I think is useful to sort of highlight as an example that's on here. It says the vision and work of the Anchor Foundation is to support Christian charities working with art, healing, and those seeking to offer social inclusion. They particularly target Christian charities because they may find it harder, if not impossible, to obtain grant funding from secular grant providers on account of their religious roots. So there are really some very specific providers in here that are looking to support churches. I think this example just highlights some of the work that the national team have done to provide some really good grant providers in here. And then it says some useful things. They are looking to support registered charities only. They're looking to provide a maximum of £12,000. It gives you some eligibility criteria, but most importantly, as I said a moment ago, the link to the specific website where you can go and approach them for to submit a grant application. So really, really useful. I think it's useful at this point just to mention as well that we do have some Dawson support for capital fundraising projects. I know that Cornerstone has been quite key in terms of people are excited about the grants section of it, and that's great. But this is also useful for me to mention that we have Jane Tarry in the office. She is the assistant diocesan secretary. If you've met Jane, you'll know that she's just a wonderful person and just full of useful information. But one of the things that she leads on, along with many other things, is to support parishes in their initial sort of discussions around bid writing, fundraising, and capital fundraising as well. And then also useful to highlight, if you speak to Jane, one thing that she may do if you are interested in that sort of thing and that capital fundraising is Charity Spark. Charity Spark is a local charity that supports specifically with fundraising and bid writing. We have a retainer with Charity Spark. So if this is an area that's really important to you as a parish, speak to Jane. She'll put you in touch with them and support you through that bid writing process. So see Cornerstone perhaps as the way to look for a grant that may be useful for you, and then open that conversation with Jane and start writing that bid process and work with Charity Spark on that. My one input around bid writing, one key thing to remember is not to talk about what you want to spend money on, but impact. There's that word again. Talk about the impact that the money will have on the people who will benefit. So it's not simply about getting the roof fixed. It's about getting the roof fixed so that we can do X, Y, Z with this many people throughout the week in our parish, and that supports our parish ministry. So it really is about the impact again. Perfect. Just to give you a little bit of history on what we've done so far. Back in July, we ran a similar webinar to this to introduce Cornerstone for the first time. I'm obviously doing this now, and we'll look to implement more of these webinars. But another thing that we ran was a small number of sessions that I like to call them Cornerstone sessions. We did that with about 10 different parishes for about 30 different people. Overall, the feedback was quite positive. The platform was well liked, but people got a lot out of the session itself. As I mentioned, it's that dedicated opportunity to spend time talking about this topic of giving and generosity. And you know, it's an interactive sort of session. So yeah, it's something that's hopefully not too boring. But it is with me, and I will be looking to run more of those. But it really is for you to invite, you know, if this is something that you're keen on, if you'd like to look at this as a tool more for your parish, come along, bring maybe your church warden and your incumbent, where we spend a bit of time looking at the platform a bit more comprehensively. Specifically, we invite you to do that with your own parish information, so we'll get you logged on beforehand. And it's a chance to take part in a generosity review, which I'll mention in just a moment. And then, as I've mentioned, it's an interactive session, and it provides you with some next steps for your parish to go away with and to work on. I think that the session itself is actually one of the key things that's come out of this for us as a diocese. As Cornerstone, looking at that as a tool is great, but this session is useful as well. And then finally, I just want to mention that as part of that, one of the things that we do is called a generosity review. Again, this has been quite a useful thing as well. Essentially, it's an online survey that we send out to you to then share with your parish, however you feel appropriate to do that, whether you think it's good to keep that just within the PCC at that time, or whether to share that more widely with your congregation. It takes about 10 minutes to complete. It is quite thorough, but every question that gets answered kind of links back to that framework of mint an idea. But it's a good tool, and it's designed again to build your knowledge and understanding of where the parish specifically thinks they're at with giving and generosity. So where you might look at the data from insights and think one thing about how we're doing as a parish with our giving and our generosity, when we look at the generosity review, we have the opportunity then to reflect on where the parish think we're at with our giving and generosity. So you kind of get a really good idea of what would be useful to look towards implementing or working on as a parish. When you complete the generosity review, this is how the data might look like. This is just a generic one, but I think it's actually probably more beneficial to look at our Darson one, which I've got on the next slide. But what we do is we ask you to complete this before coming to the session so that we can talk about it and look at it and then help you plan going forward. And that's what the current Diocese of Winchester one looks like. So really strong on there is things like promoting mechanisms. I appreciate this might be quite small. So again, you'll have the slides where you can see it in slightly more detail. But promoting mechanisms is something as a diocese that we're quite good at. But things like activating generosity is perhaps where we're weakest at. And quite similarly, if that's a word, similarly, the national picture is similar. So it's good at promoting mechanisms, but it's perhaps weak in activating generosity, or for them as well, demonstrating impact. So some interesting things to look at, and it's quite nice to see it in this format. And the other great thing is this is something that you could do on a yearly cycle or every other year. Come back to and reflect on so that you can sort of build a score so that you can say, okay, this year we got this score for our giving and generosity. We were weak in these areas. Let's spend a bit of time looking through a few pathways this year and let's build on some of those areas. And then when you reflect on that a couple of years later, you'll have a different score to see. So just highlight some stats very, very quickly as we come towards the end. This says we have 45 churches registered and 78 registered users. It's actually gone up since this in May. We actually have 51 churches registered, and that represents about 14% of our churches within the diocese have used or are using this. I think it's really important to say that one final thing from me is that Cornerstone is great, but it's there for you to use as you see fit and with the people that are really going to drive this. I think if you've got church wardens and treasurers and incumbents on board, all taking a very specific look at this a couple of points through the year, it could be a really powerful tool for you. But also to say that if you are on your own and it's just you in the parish and you're the lone treasurer or the lone church warden, then there may be elements of this that you can pull out and use to support you as well. I do think that there's a wide reach for this. So yes, so that's Cornerstone. There's something in there for I think lots of our churches to pick up and use. So as we come to an end, then next steps. If you haven't used Cornerstone already and would like access to, it's really quite simple to join. Send me an email. My email address is on the final slide that as I said, you'll get after this evening. Send me an email and I send you an invite email back to join. You can take a look at the platform for yourself, as much or as little as you'd like. And if you want to take things further, have a look out for the dates when we post them on our newsletter and on our website about some more sessions that we're going to run in September. And other than that, I will open up the floor just for any questions that you may have. There's my email address, and I will give you time to ask any questions. Either put them in the chat or just raise a hand and share with us now. That'd be great.